Dani, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to Ruined by the Internet.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
We are here today to discuss how the internet and technology has potentially changed the world of conspiracy theories over the last few decades. So, to start us off, can you just explain what's really meant by conspiracy theory and what is it about them that we as people find so fascinating?
So it's funny that you asked that question because the CIA actually created this term, conspiracy theories, after JFK's assassination because all these people are coming forward and they're like, whoa, like this assassination doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so the CIA basically came forward. They're like, anybody that doesn't believe the narrative, they are conspiracy theorists. And so now anytime there's like this thought that's not the official narrative, it's considered a conspiracy theory, which is just like people looking into whatever's going on and being like, hey, whatever you're telling us isn't fully adding up and we're not fully believing in that. And so that's kind of where it originated. Well, I mean, there were conspiracy theories well before that, but the CIA really put a label on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's as even if you've just broken it down there, it does feel like a very easy way to stifle any debate and questioning of that official narratives. But one thing I'd love for you to give us a little bit of a context on as well, given the name of your own podcast, is why are conspiracy theories so often described as a rabbit hole, and how does the internet play into this phenomenon itself?
So the term really comes from like Alice in Wonderland, right? Like she's falling down the rabbit hole and then it's like this endless wonder of things. Everything kind of like leads to the next thing and like spirals into this pile of information that is really hard to put it all into like one thought. And so the rabbit hole is just like literally me at my computer just doing all this research, literally just like going from this thing doesn't make sense to this thing to this thing to this thing. And actually it's led to me having 18 unfinished notes because I found these things in my research that didn't line up with what I was researching, but I want to come back to it later. And so it's a rabbit hole. Like there's so much information.
Well, that's a great point there, that there is so much information. And I think that one of the things that we're all aware that the internet and social media, etc., it does overwhelm you with so much information.
Yes.
And it's so algorithmically driven that it is a constant stream of not, you don't almost need to fall down the rabbit hole. It kind of throws the rabbit hole onto you at any given moment. And I wonder, beyond just that overwhelming amount of information, is there any other ways that the internet exacerbates what could loosely be considered as a conspiracy theory these days?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be on social media and it's all these conspiracy theories. And I'm really good at, I guess, almost like discerning between what's just clickbait and what's an actual conspiracy versus like I have a friend and she is not as good. So she'll call me and be like, Dani, I saw this on TikTok. And I'm like, okay, you got to get off TikTok because TikTok's great. Like, I mean, that's the point of it, right? Like this hyper emotional state where we're like freaking out about everything, but not everything is necessarily a conspiracy. I think that that's where like social media in particular will be exacerbating emotional responses. So JFK is a fantastic example of this. Before the internet, we have JFK's assassination. You have all these people that are talking and they're like, that doesn't add up. But these people aren't talking to each other. They're talking to like their immediate group of friends, maybe their neighborhood, like whoever they know, which is what, 10, 20 people tops. And out of those 10 or 20 people, maybe 5 people believe and they're like, okay, cool, whatever. But you have, after the news dies down, people kind of forget about JFK and they go on about their day. Well, now I can get on TikTok, I can post a video and it goes viral. Millions of people could see that.
You know, obviously the internet didn't create conspiracy theories, but as you've alluded to there, it absolutely turbocharges the velocity of them. And also, as you called out there, creates that much larger connected marketplace for them, where as humans we recognize patterns and we can kind of create our own theories about anything and then mention it to somebody and they might just be like, you're being an idiot. Okay, cool. And it never goes any further than that until you find, as you said, like 1 or 2 other people that might indulge your idea. But now, not only can we find thousands or millions of different data points and connect them together into a theory, we can spread that to thousands and millions of people instantly. So I think from there, what I'd love to talk with you about is, how does a typical conspiracy theory start now in this digital age? Is there a way that we see them forming online and spreading? And more importantly, is there a particular mindset that they potentially target or are more effective with?
Yes and no. So I think that like the algorithms are really good at pushing information that seems to be getting an emotional response. I think that the internet has really changed the way conspiracy theories are spread because with Ghislaine Maxwell recently, obviously she's in jail, right? Recently there was a picture circulating that she was actually in Canada and you could see
Mm,
like this person looked just like Ghislaine. Well, turns out it was like actually AI, and it was so easy to basically just put a picture of Ghislaine Maxwell into AI, create it, and then post it on the internet. Now everybody's like freaking out because Ghislaine's out of prison and she's in Canada. Which, if Ghislaine was actually out of prison, then
yeah,
don't you think that
you.
she'd be hiding a little bit better? But also, like,
Yeah,
I don't know, like it goes back and forth. So we have JFK's assassination, and I think that a lot of people are comparing that assassination to Charlie Kirk right now. And so Charlie Kirk gets shot instantly within hours. I'm getting flooded with messages because it's a conspiracy. Somebody, it wasn't this person, it was that person. It was like, why'd they kill him? It was a hologram. It was this, it was that. His wife's involved. Anyway, the point is with JFK, the grief that everyone felt instantly and then started to kind of step back and be like, wait a second, like that doesn't add up. And even with like 9/11, you see that a little bit, but with 9/11, we have more videos. The internet's around, but it's not as advanced as it is today. So you have these videos, and you're like, wait a second, but it
yeah.
was still slower to spread, right?
And that's an interesting point there around, I guess, the progression in sophistication of technology. The two assassinations that you've mentioned. Obviously, the recent Charlie Kirk one. I remember, I was waking up here in Australia, and it was morning, and as a lot of us do, like we get a coffee and check our phone first thing, and I was just like, oh my god, this thing's just happened. And then, like you say, within hours, I felt like that was the only thing I could find online. And it was
Yeah.
all as you said, there's all these different people's theories about what had actually happened and what hadn't happened. And part of me thinks with that is going back to your 9/11 example. I was 20 when that happened. And I remember, you've got kind of TV footage and a couple of handheld camcorders capturing
Yeah.
it. And the sophistication of the tech to fake something like that, I'm sure it would have been there, but it wouldn't have been something that hundreds of millions of people around the world would have been able to do so quickly. You mentioned that AI
Yeah.
picture of Ghislaine Maxwell, that now we may not believe anything that we see unless we've seen it with our own eyes directly. And so I guess where my mind goes on that is, as the tech is allowing people to create and disseminate not only simple new conspiracies, but complex ones through the power of the tools that we've got to create them. Do you think it's also leading us to be more cynical of them because we know how much fake stuff is out there? Or is it the kind of the velocity of the information coming at us all the time? We don't really get that time to question it. We're just like, this is real. I already agree with this. This is real. I'm on board with this conspiracy. Like, what's really going on in that sense?
I think it goes back and forth. My job is literally to research conspiracy theories. And so, like, when I dig into something, I'm like, oh, cool. Like, that looks like it can add to my research. And then I watch it and I watch it and I'm like, I don't know. Like, that seems off to me. Or it seems correct. So then, like, if you want to go look at it and you can make that decision for yourself, because I'm not like an AI detector. I have no idea. Like half the time it's easy, right? If they like three fingers or like I don't know, their arms are really long, something weird is going on, but like half the time it's really hard.
No, of course. And I think especially video, if we see a static image that someone's faked using AI, like we can obviously spend that time interrogating it.
Yeah.
But when it's a video, it's kind of, unless you're really doing that analysis of freeze framing everything, you're just kind of watching the video and blown away by what you're seeing or deeply cynical of what you're seeing. And so I think that video platforms make the spread and maybe the belief of conspiracy theories a lot easier. Would you say that platforms, especially like TikTok, that are, quick video, like it's designed specifically just to feed you one after another, are they particularly successful? I mean, successful, whether that's the right word or not, but are they particularly powerful at getting conspiracy theories moving in terms of spread?
Sometimes. So
Right.
TikTok is very interesting. So what I have noticed is conspiracy theories, they want you to believe they'll let spread like wildfire. Like they'll let it go and they like people will like buy into it. But the minute you hit a nerve of like conspiracy theory that in my opinion seems to be leaning towards truth, they will cancel that quickly.
Right. Why
So
is
that's
that?
when they're like, they'll ban the videos. They're like, you can't talk about that. You're not spreading that. Or like, I posted a video, it got banned, and then I had 2 other videos that were fine, but they shadow banned them. So like, I went to my personal TikTok to go view because I was like, it has 0 views. How does it have 0 views? And I couldn't even see it because they won't even show it on your profile or anything. So it
Why do
depends
you
on
think that?
the theory.
Why do you think that they do that? Is it, there's a couple of ways I could take that. One is they want it to everything to be fake. Do you know what I mean? Like entertainment rather than
Yeah.
factual. And is that what you think they're doing?
I think it's a distraction mechanism. I think
Yeah. Okay.
that's what social media is in general, is like they're trying to keep us pacified and distracted. Like they want to placate the conspiracy theorists, right? Like they want to give you something that you might actually like, that will seem like a conspiracy, whatever, it's cute, it's fun. Here's a conspiracy, right? And they give it to you. But then they have all these actual conspiracy theories that have some evidence behind them, and you're saying some like pretty aggressive things, and they're like, "Ooh, no,
Right.
you're not saying that."
Look, we all hear reports and stuff about how these platforms are obviously massive enablers of the breakdown in trust of information in general. And the fact that they are potentially, as you said, shadow banning or taking down videos that are more factual than a fake one, it doesn't really fight that argument that these platforms are responsible for keeping fake and manipulative information out there and messing with people. But I think just on the topic of factual stuff, we've talked about JFK assassination so far. And so I'd love to get into now whether, because, okay, we know with the internet and essentially the most supercomputer in our pocket at all time, we've got access to so much information. So if we find something, we can try and debunk it or confirm it, whatever way we're leaning and whatever we're trying to get out of it. Has that access for the regular people changed the longevity of conspiracy theories at all? Or is it simply a case of now that people can debunk them in real time so they don't really get off the ground, essentially, if they're not real?
So people that don't believe in conspiracies, they're going to debunk them. Well, okay, let's actually back up a little bit. The mainstream is going to try to debunk conspiracy theory instantly. They love to debunk things, but even if you just go to like news sites because you're trying to look up whatever, and they have, oh, this is a conspiracy theory, and even in the title it's like conspiracy theory, and then it has the name of it and it says debunked, and it just like reaffirms the main narrative, and it's like conspiracy theorists are crazy.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
and that's the same thing on social media. You'll have the same people, they're like, oh, the conspiracy theorists are going to say this, and that's just dumb. And I think that at the end of the day, you either believe it or you don't. And that's not for me to decide. I'm not trying to make up your mind. Even like I talked about facts, some people will say that like what I'm sharing is not facts. You're just trying to share things that are going to emotionally like get people riled up. And if it moves you emotionally, it's probably on purpose. Like there's probably something there that you should pay attention to. But if it doesn't, like maybe you don't resonate with that, and that's okay too. So I think that it's easy to debunk if you don't want to believe it. I think it's the ignorance factor. It's easier to not believe conspiracy theories.
But then also, I think another way that the digital world plays into all of this is this notion of dunking culture. Like everything
Yeah.
online is about winning an argument. And as you said, the whether it's the larger, more mainstream news platforms, obviously they use their influence and power to, as you said, rubber stamp that this is a conspiracy theory on it,
Yeah.
because they do know that the emotional side of that takes the people that are already on board with what they're saying, and then they can use that as a bit of a weapon to kind of dunk on those crazy people that may believe this or not. But what I find interesting about that is the term conspiracy theory seems to be, from what I can see anyway, largely applied to, let's say, more right leaning beliefs.
Yes.
Whereas, everybody, and this is my personal belief anyway, everybody, no matter what kind of political, social alignment you have, has their own conspiracy theories about the people or situations that they don't like. So, why is it that the label conspiracy theory is so heavily weighted against one side of the aisle, do you think, as opposed to being an all encompassing thing?
I think it's to further divide because I believe that people on both sides of the aisle will either believe or not believe a conspiracy theory.
Mm,
I think that a lot of people will make this political and they'll be like, that's because the left doesn't think for themselves, right? And that's not the case. I think that it's to further divide, right? But also to put this like gross label on it, like, oh, you guys are just spreading disinformation, like you guys are just and to label us as conspiracy theorists as a very political motivated person. I don't know, like I'm not politically motivated anyway. I think that everybody's corrupt. But I'll
no,
get so many people and they're like, this is MAGA, this is right leaning, like of course you would think that, blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, like if you want to believe that, that's fine. It doesn't affect me. But at the end of the day, if you believe that your politician is doing the right thing, you should call them. You
yeah.
should talk to them.
And again, like from what I can see, I feel like the label conspiracy theory is, as I said, so heavily weighted in one direction. But I think the ability of humans for pattern recognition, we all have it, and everybody's making up their own theories on things. But I
Yeah.
guess where I was going with that was, let's rewind back to, say, the start of the pandemic. Now, there was a lot of very, very fast spreading conspiracy theories, we can call it,
Yes.
regarding the virus and things like that. You know, one that I found particularly intriguing and amusing was this notion of like 5G towers were like spreading the virus. And I was like, I don't know how this would work, but you know, like the ability for people to kind of put things like that together and then spread everywhere. And then of course there was all different sorts of theories around different aspects of the pandemic and the response and whatever it was, that they're all disparate on their own, but then they can all be collated into one much larger narrative that I think we saw about Klaus Schwab and, you know, the World Economic Forum and all sorts of things that came out of there. And so what I found particularly interesting about how all that played out was, I remember playing this game as a kid, and you get this piece of paper and you write a line of a story, and then you fold the paper and then someone else writes another line underneath, and then at the end you unfold the paper and you read the story out. And it reminded me of that game in that you've got all these different people contributing to one narrative that forms and just becomes this huge thing that seemingly spread all around the world. Obviously, that was facilitated by the internet. While everyone's at home, we're not out kind
Mm-hmm.
of really doing much with people. And so that hyper focus on being online and dealing with people online, and as you've mentioned before, that polarization that's already online, that this is just kind of another cudgel that flows into, it felt like it just created a perfect storm for not only generating and spreading what could be considered conspiracy theories or not be considered conspiracy theories. But it also felt like that was a real watershed moment when, for me personally, I noticed that the label conspiracy theorist became so liberally used across everybody that may have had a question about anything, and not just to do with COVID, like anything in general,
Yeah.
that we've kind of never recovered from.
I mean, you can see that really well, like when they created the label and like people would stop talking to their conspiracy theory friends, right? And so, and with COVID, I think that's such a great example of why you have to do your own research, because you're
Mm,
right. Like I feel like it snowballed because people had so much time on their hands and they're like, I wonder like how much crazy we could put into this. And yeah, you could say all kinds of things about 5G towers. It spreading COVID, I don't think is one of them. I've heard the theory that it actually activates something inside the vaccine, and I know like a lot of the COVID discussion was like, "Oh, you're an anti-vaxxer or you're a vaxxer," and like, okay, and I do think that that's actually when I would say it really became political, like left leaning or right leaning, and maybe it happened before that, but you like really saw that polarization because you have this argument where people are like, I'm not comfortable taking the vaccine because it has not been properly tested. And then you have these other people that are like, you have to take the vaccine because then we can get back to real life. And you have
mm,
this like fight, and it seemed to be very politically motivated. Right leaning people were not taking the vaccine, left leaning people absolutely were. And then they furthered the argument by adding racism on top of it. They furthered the argument by adding abortion topics on top of it. Like you have this all this fighting going on.
mm.
And so at that point, people are just putting things on the internet, right? And so anything can go on the internet. I can make a video right now and say like my sky just turned purple and show an AI video of it. And people will be like, whoa, that's crazy. So,
Yeah.
like, that's where you really have to do your own research, because conspiracy theories can get out of control. And that's why there's such this negative stigma on it, is because people will just say anything. And then other people will be like, that's conspiracy theory. You're crazy. And that's the end of it.
That phrase, do your own research. Now, that is a particularly interesting one to me because from where I stand, anyone that may not believe a conspiracy theory, like the ideal thing to do is to research it yourself. And it doesn't have to be a conspiracy theory. It could be anything that you may not
Yeah.
believe is true. Like you should look into it yourself and find it. But exactly as you mentioned there, that phrase, do your own research, seemed to completely flip in this hyper emotional period of time that finding the truth became a bad thing. So yeah, I found that quite an interesting part of digital conspiracy theories over the last few years, that just trying to learn and educate yourself became a bad thing. And so I
Yeah.
wonder if that is still the case or we've kind of chilled out a little bit now. But one thing I wanted to get into you with was the ability for digital first conspiracy theories to then translate offline. And one that a lot of people are definitely aware of because we've seen it kind of permeate into culture, even things on Netflix, etc., is very well known one of QAnon, which, and I'm sure you could explain it better than I can, that started in these kind of niche digital forums, and then it's just grown and grown and grown into this huge offline thing with real world consequences. Now, because we are in this digital age now where everyone, as you said, can create anything, spread it online so rapidly and easily. Is that a typical trajectory now for conspiracy theories? They might start online and then get out into the real world, or do they typically just stay online until they either die out, reach their peak, or are disproven?
I think a lot more people will speak about it in person than online,
Hmm.
because, like, for a long time, this is gonna sound so funny, I was so nervous to tell people that I had a conspiracy theory podcast because I didn't want them to look at me and be like, "You're crazy." But then when I started talking to people, you realize how many people are like, "Yeah, I've been looking into our food more." Or I've
Mm.
been looking into vaccines are a huge one, right? Vaccines more. I've had people, they're like, I've been looking into the sunscreens and just different things where they're like, something, I don't know, something that I saw online triggered me to go look into it. And they didn't post something online about it. They saw something online, they looked into it, and now, like, they're more willing to talk to you in person about what they've learned, what they've found, what they know, versus like talking online, because online's a really scary place. And that's where you'll get, like, you'll post a video, and this happens all the time, right? That you post a video, you have like 5 people comment, and they're like, wow, yeah, like, yeah, I totally agree with this. Then you have 10 people comment, they're like, you're stupid, go kill yourself. We don't want to hear you. You're a waste of space. You're spreading disinformation on the internet. So you have this like balance. People don't want to deal with that. And I get it. Like, I deal with it and I
Yeah.
just don't read the comments. So, you have this idea that, like, I think people will see it online, but they're more likely to talk to you offline about it.
Yeah, that's a great point, that the offline conversation does allow socially accepted deeper analysis. And I've realized the same thing myself. I could read something online that I find interesting and mention it to some of my friends who I know are kind of similarly minded. And they will have seen it too. And then we can, as you say, debate it in real life, like laugh at it or whatever it kind of ends up being. But as you've said there, the digital space doesn't really lend itself to much nuance. It's like 100% yes, 100% no,
Yeah.
and whatever whatever you disagree, you're an idiot. But I think what I'd love to get into now was the recent phenomenon of the monetization of various platforms that obviously pay you based on the more engagement and stuff that you get across them. We know that the way algorithms work is that more extreme views that does generate that emotional response gets the most visibility, which
Yep.
encourages that behavior, which earns the most money. And we know that outrage is such a powerful vector for delivering this stuff and therefore making money. Now, the fact that people can essentially turn, you know, making up things or exposing things, whatever they're doing, into quite a successful living. Do you think that that monetization of platforms has changed the landscape of what is a conspiracy theory, but more importantly, like the type or the amount of them that are getting put out there, simply because there's that financial incentive to do so.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what we're seeing with like when you brought up the COVID thing and people just like adding on top of it, adding on top of it. You're incentivized to do it. You're
Mm,
getting the likes, you're getting the follows, you're getting the comments. And even if people are commenting bad things, they're still commenting. They're still feeding into the algorithm. And so you have this machine that works off of outrage, whether it's good or it's bad. So then you'll have like somebody post this video and it's conspiracy theory, and you have this other person and they debunk it, right? Well, both people are just trying to make money off of you.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so and I mean I say that like I monetize my podcast, that's how a lot of us make money, but at the same time, you're right. Like the outrage creates
Yeah,
this incentive to want to, but also like want to make it bigger and more than it is. And so
yeah.
I think that, I guess it's my opinion that if you keep faking it and like trying to put this like emotional charge behind something that's not true, people are going to call you out about it eventually, and you potentially will lose followers and then you'll lose the money. So why don't I just be truthful from the beginning?
No, I think that's a great point. And I think if we're all really honest with ourselves, like that's the way it should be. You can try and do whatever extreme version of whatever you're saying, whatever conspiracy thought you might have had or what you're encouraging, etc. But people investigating it themselves and calling out your bullshit, it seems like a fair consequence
Yeah.
of what should be a responsible use of the digital world. Hopefully, we can all contribute a little bit to filtering the information and keeping it kind of on the straight and narrow to what's true and what isn't. But on
Well, but
that point,
TikTok also, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but
no, no,
TikTok
go,
also
please
really
go.
incentivizes this because so I posted a video a couple months ago, and I was like, I had found something on the internet that freaked me out. It freaked me out in a weird kind of way. And people really do ask me all the time. They're like, "Do you think that you'll be like murdered for the information that you're
Right.
putting out?" And to me, I'm like, no, because everything that I find is open source. It's on the internet. Anybody can find it. It's not just like me finding it. I might just be putting it into a platform that people have never put all these pieces together before. But no, like you can find all this on the internet, and I've listed out all my sources. Well, in this particular instance, I had gotten a comment from somebody that I know locally that I was like talking to, and then I found a piece of the puzzle that kind of fit together, and I was like, whoa. So that freaked me out. So I posted this very emotionally charged video on TikTok, and it didn't say anything. I was just like, if you've ever wondered if I've ever felt like I would be unalived for the information I found, I haven't until this moment. And I was very
Wow.
emotional about it, and that was it. That's all I said. And people, I don't know, that video blew up. All my other videos actually have information in there, and they're like talking about whatever the conspiracy is. But that particular video, I was emotionally charged, and later found out that like it wasn't as aggressive as I probably made it out to be. But in the moment, I was distraught. So I was like, I should post this on Instagram. I don't know. And so I did. Well, of course, that's my biggest video. And then I had these other videos where I'm like talking about actual things that I've like found. And they're like, oh, no, we're not showing that.
Yeah,
So,
look, even that's quite an insight into people's behavior. And from everything that you're saying there, it's like people latched on to that as, see, this is the result of crazy conspiracy theorists. They're violent, they threaten people, they do whatever it is. So it does kind of confirm their biases of what they consider a dangerous person, and a dangerous person believes in conspiracy theories, et cetera, et cetera. So, it
right.
doesn't really surprise me from a human psychology angle that kind of stuff is so resonant with audience. But can you give us an example of a historical conspiracy theory that has either been confirmed or debunked thanks to the availability of information on the internet?
I don't know about the internet. Well, the internet helps us spread things. My very first episode I did was Gulf of Tonkin. And the reason I did that episode is because it was a conspiracy theory at the time when it happened, but now it's been confirmed that what the conspiracy theorists believed was true. I guess we had a ship in the Gulf of Tonkin. It was under attack, is what they told us. We were under attack, so that's why we went into the Korean War, right? But what actually was happening was that there was just like really big waves, and that the radar was, I mean, it was still young. And so the radar was showing that potentially we were under attack, but really it was just like the waves. And so you have this ship out there shooting at nothing, saying that they're under attack. And then like the next day they reported back to Washington. They're like, sorry, like our bad. We were in this storm and it wasn't actually an attack. It was just this waves. And they're like, well, we've already told all the people that you guys were under attack and we're already going to war for it. We've already ramped up the people enough that they're willing to back this war because we told them what you told us, which is that you were under attack. Well, it turns out 70 years later, the information comes out that they never were actually under attack. And we went to war under the pretense of us being under attack when we weren't.
That is such a great example. And I think the breakdown of trust within media and government institutions, ironically, does lead to the rise of, as we've touched on a few times now, the stamping of people as conspiracy theorists who question it for not believing everything that they're told wholesale. But, examples like that, it really shows you why not trusting something as it's presented to you immediately is often a smart approach, which it feels like quite a symbiotic relationship between the denigration of trust that these larger organizations, outlets, platforms, whatever, have brought on themselves with the rise of the same conspiracy theorists that they are so quick to push against for questioning what they're doing. And I guess this can maybe lead on to my next question, which is, you mentioned the Ghislaine Maxwell image that you saw. Now, AI tools, we've seen them everywhere. It's like you can't get away from people talking about them online these days. The sophistication of them, especially the video gen ones, is getting crazy. How
Yeah.
do you how do you think the world of conspiracy theories goes from here now that everyone will soon enough have access to pretty believable the ability to make pretty believable looking content that, unless you're really trying to look into it, is enough for you to believe it?
It's hard because I think that the minute people start needing to do research into things because they can't believe what they're seeing, they're going to start waking up to the truth of things. And I think that's their most powerful tool right now, is that people aren't doing their own research. They're just seeing a video online. They're like, whoa, that was crazy. And then they swipe to the next video, right? So as AI improves and as we start to realize like everything that we're seeing is actually fake because AI can do everything that we're doing, then I think that's when people will start to research into other things more. And it could backfire a little bit. I think that that's what happened with COVID, is like you see this huge influx of conspiracy theorists and theories during this time because people started to question things. And the minute people start to question things, they start to research things. And when people start to research things, they become more skeptical and they become less trusting. Well, it's this like cycle. You created this trust, or this breach of trust. So now I want to research it, which further creates this breach of trust. Well, as AI improves, it's going to cause more people to be like, I don't trust that. So let me research it. Well, now I definitely don't trust it. And once you don't trust one thing, it's really quick to not trust the next thing, to not trust the next thing. And so it's a real problem for, big pharma, for the health, like public health, for our food industry, for, all big industries could potentially collapse if too many people believe in conspiracy theories. So it's in their best nature to make us seem crazy.
It is interesting that not only can looking into things, help us feel at ease, like, oh, cool, you're lucky, I realize this is bullshit now. But, the other point that you said there, like the more of this, what could be fake, it could be real, I'm not making comment on any of that here, but the more information that you are fed and uncover there, like the more you dig your heels in. And once you've gone so far down that rabbit hole, as they say, why do you think it's so difficult if someone's gone down one that's fake, we'll just use that as the example. Why is it so difficult to kind of pull them out of it? Is it because it's easier to convince someone to believe something that's wrong than convince them that they were wrong?
I think it's the time commitment. Right. I think like you go down this rabbit hole and you go into it like looking to debunk it or looking to prove it, right? Whatever your goal is. And then you come out of it and you're like, I just spent all this time just to prove that I was wrong. Like, and people don't want to be wrong. It's really hard to go into something and want to prove yourself right and then come out of it wrong. So like to be proven wrong is really hard for people.
No, of course. And on your point there, do you think people will just stay down the rabbit hole until they find that information that will confirm them right and then say, hey, look, I was right because of this one or two pieces that I've found, rather than
Right.
the overwhelming evidence to the contrary? And obviously that is a positive or a negative of the way that the internet plays out in this sense. One thing I'd love to speak about on that point is, a lot of the time we hear people talking about, oh, I know somebody and they believe in this conspiracy, or, I can't get them to change what they think, et cetera, et cetera. Is there kind of methods, like just hypothetically, if someone is concerned that their loved one or whoever is going down one of these rabbit holes of disinformation, we'll call it, whatever, stuff that's not real, is there any way to particularly approach that with people that's not just saying, hey, you're wrong and you're an idiot? Like what's going to work best for having that dialogue?
I think personally, you should never, like, and just like in interpersonal relationships, you don't go at somebody and be like, you're wrong, right? Like, they don't want to have that conversation because now you've cut them off. And I think this is a real problem in our society, is that, like, I disagree with you. Let's talk about why. And so to me, if somebody came at me and they're like, I don't think your conspiracy is right, and I'm like, okay, cool. So give me your evidence to prove that my conspiracy is incorrect. So let's start there. Let's start with the conversation that, like, you think I'm wrong and I think you're wrong. So you present me your evidence and I'll present you my evidence, and let's have like an actual discussion, not like a heated argument. If you can go into it being level-headed, them being level-headed, and actually having a conversation, then you can make serious moves. And that's just like an interpersonal thing. That's not even a conspiracy thing, right? Because you could talk about that with left and right. You could talk about that with like racism or abortion or like any guns, any like really emotionally charged thing. We can't have this conversation if there's too many emotions involved.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on something there, which it is bigger than conspiracy theories. It's a social level thing. And
Absolutely.
I think that one of the real negatives of the way that this algorithmic sorting and monetization and everything is so extreme and so quick, it doesn't lend itself at all to that nuanced discussion. And it feels like we're getting worse and worse and worse as we go. If we're honest with ourselves, we know it's all about that interpersonal relationships and just being nicer to people, kinder, and having your mind open to learning something new, whether it proves you right or it proves you wrong, but just having an interest in, because what I find so interesting about conspiracy theories personally is the creativity that people can put into them. And I think that they're knowing everything that we've spoken about, this flood of information and new conspiracy theories, looking back over, say, the last 20, 30 years, then, would you, as a conspiracy theory expert, say technology's been an overall positive or negative effect on the world of conspiracy theories, and why?
I think both, because I think now it's easier for us to get the information, but I think that also it hinders like actual information, because as an example, like I did a Jim Carrey episode because of how he looked at the Caesar Awards. And so I was going through and people had sent me these videos of him exposing, and I say that in quotes, like secret societies on talk show hosts and trying to expose like all these different things. So I was like, that's really interesting. Is that why they cloned him and made him a different person, right? Because that's the theory. Well, so I'm going through all this and I'm finding these videos of him on these late night shows. And if you actually watch the full interview, that's not what he was doing. He was like making fun of the conspiracy theories that there are secret societies ruling Hollywood. So I was like, well, I can't use that because like it's not true. And so you have this like battle online where it's like, well, I saw this video. Well, if you did like not even 2 minutes of research and went and saw the entire clip, then you would have found that the video's wrong. That is out of context.
Exactly. And it's such a great point that, as you said, it is such an emotionally charged space that everyone is so susceptible to seeing something in their own unique way. And it's so fascinating to me that depending on what your preconceived thoughts or beliefs on the entire thing are, like you'll see something completely different in the same piece of information. And I can imagine that that's quite an interesting part of what you do in this, is like just uncovering what people have come up with compared to what the real events that may or may not have happened in the world.
Yeah. I mean, and there's all kinds of things. My podcast I try to prove the conspiracy theory, or like I try to back up the conspiracy theory. That's the point. If you're there to learn about it, I'm trying to teach you about it. However, and I tell everybody, I don't debunk it. If you want to go and like debunk it yourself, that's easy to do. Anybody can debunk a conspiracy theory. I think it's harder to find all the pieces of a theory than it is to find like the debunked part of it. And so when you're listening to the podcast, or if you listen to podcasts and it sounds very much like I'm pro conspiracy, that's the point. Like I'm trying to
That's an interesting point there too, that it's very easy to debunk something because you could find one piece that to you on a personal level is the magic bullet that is going to debunk an entire complexly woven narrative, and you'll just back yourself on that. And so it's interesting that to prove something real, you need almost a gigantic case file of evidence, but in our minds, to disprove something, it's just like, oh no, I saw a video that said this.
Right.
So you're completely wrong, which is mad when you think about it. Thanks so much for that, Dani. What have you got coming up, and where can people importantly follow what you're up to?
You can kind of follow me anywhere, like all the big platforms, like podcast platforms. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Rumble. I just finished an Ellen DeGeneres episode, so that's like been really popular. People are really excited about that. And Wayfair, both those just came out. I just finished a Britney Spears episode and a Jim Carrey episode, and then I have a Cuba episode coming up. And then I think I'm going to dive into Aleister Crowley and the Bush family, because why not?
That all sounds incredibly interesting, and we'll definitely keep an eye out for those. Thanks again, Dani. That was great.
Thank you. I appreciate it.